This week, we have two interviews. First, we welcome DJ Sampath, co founder and CEO at Armorblox, to discuss securing the human layer. Then we welcome Bruce Sussman, Media Development Director from Secure World, to give us a preview of Secure World Boston. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals.
Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly.
Today's determined attackers easily bypass even the most advanced network defenses. Trying to ramp up staff to detect their backdoors can cost thousands of dollars and take months, even years. With Active Countermeasures AI Hunter, we enable junior analysts to detect even the most advanced backdoors in a matter of hours. Sign up for a demo and purchase our product today by visiting activecountermeasures.com/PSW. Active Countermeasures. Make every analyst a hunter.
How much confidence do you have in your security program? Trusted Sec is a global information security consulting firm created by Dave Kennedy with some of the industry's most respected professionals. Their team works collaboratively with your company to improve security regardless of its current maturity level. Trusted Sec offers an ever-growing list of customized services including red and purple teaming, software and hardware security, incident response, PCI, and risk and maturity assessments. You can visit trustedsec.com/security weekly to learn how Trusted Sec can become an extension of your team.
Are you worried about PCI compliance? Does your development team understand or care about security? Are you ready to face a breach of your customer sensitive data? See the worst that can happen before it does. Black Hills Information Security can help you help management see the future. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a web application penetration test can mitigate the risk before you go live.
Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 119, recorded February 25th, 2019. I am your host, Matt Alderman, here in Colorado, joined by my co-host, Paul Asadorian, in G-Unit Studio in Rhode Island.
Hey, thanks, Matt. It's good to be here today. Excited about this episode and all episodes that we do here this week, but this one's going to be a lot of fun. I was just looking over the agenda, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, and welcome back, by the way. I hope you had a good break.
I did. We did lots of kid stuff, some house stuff, some troubleshooting of my house stuff. It's like everything in my house breaks, dude. I don't understand what it is, but like my dishwasher's not working right. My HVAC unit's still having issues. And it's weird. I get kind of creeped out because like troubleshooting those things are the same process that I go through to troubleshoot, networks and systems and security things. So there might be a segment or two coming up on troubleshooting.
At least you were home when it broke and you don't have to go back home when you're in the studio.
This is true. And, I think now I could probably, with a little more work, become an HVAC repairman. So I've got that as a fallback, in case this doesn't work out.
Yeah, just in case. But let's not let's not jinx ourselves too quickly here. All right, Ocean is hosting Rhode Island Cybersecurity Exchange Day on March 13th at the O'Hare Academic Building at Salve Regina in Newport, Rhode Island. Register now at ocean.org, OSHEAN.org/events. Also, join us April 1st to 3rd at Disney's Contemporary Resort for InfoSec World 2019. Visit infosecworld.misty.com/security-weekly and use the registration code OS19-SecWeek for 15% off the main conference or World Pass. We will be recording at InfoSec World 2019. If you are interested in booking an interview or briefing with Security Weekly, please visit securityweekly.com/conference request to learn more. All right, let's start with interview number 1. DJ Sampath is the co-founder and chief executive officer at Armorblox. Prior to Armorblox, he was a VP of engineering and the founding team member of StackRox. DJ was senior research scientist at Deutsche Telekom Labs, where he was responsible for the secure digital transformation of telcos to a cloud-native, software-defined stack. Prior to that, he was at Juniper Networks and introduced machine-driven classification to the unified threat management platform. DJ, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me, Matt and Paul. Super excited to be here.
DJ,
so
reading your background, one of my first jobs early on, we were talking about firewalls just earlier. I was a NetScreen firewall engineer. Were you at Juniper when the acquisition took place back in the day?
I was there right after. In fact, the boxes that I worked on were NetScreen boxes that had, one of my jobs was to sort of like combine those operating systems. Trying to take the Junos operating system and the NetScreen operating system, trying to combine them into a single operating system. So yes, that's pretty much what I worked on the NetScreen, NetScreen devices. So I know what you're talking about.
That's awesome. Yeah, I managed them for a pretty large university, actually. We had some of the higher-end NetScreen gear. The one that looked like a mini refrigerator that came off of a spaceship. You remember that one?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's right. That's right. They turned it into, they were the SRX 3000 series. That's what they morphed into on the Juniper side.
Yeah. But when they were NetScreen, it really did look like a mini fridge, but it looked like it came off some kind of alien spacecraft, and it was awesome. It was really cool. That was where I started doing a lot of firewall stuff. So
very cool. Yeah, I think some of the NetScreen boxes were definitely awesome to look at.
Cool.
Yeah, and DJ and I have this interesting overlap history a little bit as well. I mean, in information security, you're only 1 or 2 degrees of separation away. Forget the Kevin Bacon 6 degrees of separation. That's way too far. DJ was at StackRox when I was at Layered Insight. We compete in the container security space. Melinda Marks, who, Paul, you used to work with at Tenable with us, is also now over at Armorblox and was formerly at StackRox. So there's a lot of connections here on this interview segment.
It's awesome.
Absolutely. Melinda, helped us just come out of stealth, and she's phenomenal. She's a force to reckon with.
Yeah, definitely.
I agree.
She's learned from some good.
Absolutely. Yeah. And she always makes sure that she attributes it to you, Matt. And she's had a phenomenal experience working with you.
They're all lies. So for this segment, we want to talk about securing the human layer. And what's interesting about Armorblox, we'll talk here about the problem and stuff, is we talk a lot about machine learning and artificial intelligence. A lot of people throw those terms around. But you're actually leveraging aspects of artificial intelligence, specifically natural learning understanding, to actually solve some very specific cases in the InfoSec space. And so what I want to start with a little bit is kind of the problem statement. What kind of problem are we still facing? And then we can talk a little bit about how natural learning understanding actually fits into helping solve aspects of those problems.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'll dive into the context of itself, right? One of the, right after StackRox, I was looking at what is an interesting problem to get out there and solve, and had over 300 plus conversations with CIOs and CISOs and security analysts, and I asked them, hey, what is a real problem that you're facing that I could go help solve next, and as I was going through that exercise, people. They came up with a whole lot of different problems, right? They talked about, hey, I've still got a phishing problem. This is 2017, and I still got a phishing problem. I've still got a spear phishing attack. Socially engineered emails are coming in. The problems with protecting merger and acquisition information. So when they're talking about insider threats from in regulated industries, and they talked about hey, I've got a data loss DLP problem because hey, look at Levendowski walking away with data. How could we prevented that? And so when I heard all of these things, there was this basically me and Anand, my co-founder, who's the chief product officer, we put the whole thing up on a board and we said, hey, how what is the connective thread across all of these things that we're seeing? And we had our moment of epiphany when we looked at all of that. And it was basically that 90% of enterprise data is largely textual today, whether it's in emails, in documents, in Slack messaging, whatever you're using for messaging, or Confluence. It's textual information that's stored inside of the enterprises. And enterprise security solutions have largely been very unintelligent about textual data. Right? They don't understand textual data because there's always a focus on trying to do something really fast at wireline speeds. So they're trying to turn that into signatures. They're trying to turn it into a SHA-256 or a or an MD5 sum. And so and we all know, and especially Paul can assert to this point about he's an audiophile. We just talked about that. Anytime you compress something, you're losing fidelity of information. You're losing some quality. And with textual information, when you compress it into a signature, you just lost the ability to reason about it. And so when we said, hey, listen, if we could bring in this new signal, the signal that allows you to reason about textual data into the enterprise security stack, we may be able to help. We may be able to help all of our customers, all of the conversations that we had from, when we talk to all these folks, we might be able to move the needle for them even by just a little bit. And that's sort of how, we sort of saw the problem, and we felt like, we could bring that new signal. And on that new signal, we're calling that the natural language understanding, or NLU. And if you have used, Google Home or Alexa or Siri in the recent past, you've been using natural language understanding. And it's getting commoditized in a whole lot of different segments. But we observed that when it came to cybersecurity, this was missing. And that's really what we're bringing to the table.
Right. So where we've primarily been focused on metadata, you're actually talking about the actual contextual data itself, which is a little different because by understanding that context, we can start to reason about how data is either being used correctly or incorrectly. And I think that's where these artificial intelligence aspects of the natural language understanding start to come in to say, because I understand the contextual information of the actual data itself and not some metadata components, I can start to reason differently than I have to say, well, should I allow somebody to have access to that data or allow that data to move, which is unique, I think, in the space.
Right. I mean, you're spot on. I think the way we sort of, when we started digging into the core pieces of the technology stack to see how would we, enable this, deep learning had gone through an inflection point. If you were to fast forward, roll back, rewind to about 6 or 7 years ago, there was this moment of renaissance that happened for images. Deep learning, when it was applied to images, could do image recognition pretty seamlessly. That's sort of how, you're automatically tagged when you show up on Facebook. Even if you're ducking behind and you really don't want your picture to be taken, Facebook can still classify and say, hey, Matt, is that really you in the back? And that was because deep learning evolved to the point where it could recognize images. A similar moment of renaissance happened for textual information, textual data. And that happened roughly about a year and a half ago. And that's really what's gotten us excited, because now we've got the capability of being able to fundamentally reimagine policies, from the ground up. What does it mean? What does a policy really mean? A policy is basically trying to enforce, a rule or saying, hey, here's what we think needs to happen, right? And to your point, Matt, when you said that, hey, you can now start reasoning about data moving across boundaries, we can now do that by asking a simple question. Using machine comprehension or, code reference resolution. These are natural language understanding techniques and NLP techniques that we're now applying using deep learning to automatically, label data, process data, and make it so that we can reason with it.
Right. And then from a rules perspective, right? I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges here is behavior, right? Understanding normal and abnormal behavior, which then implies a set of potential rules like allow or disallow that then get built into a policy. And I think one of the challenges for everybody is how do I set these things up? If I have to manually go out and set this stuff up, it takes a long time to set up. How do you address like the learning aspects of building out different policies and different rule sets that allow organizations easier to decide yay or nay whether I want to enforce that or not?
That's a fantastic question, and I think and this is what we learned in our in our quest to understand what our customers want. One of our sort of central focuses is to build a product which has dollops of user empathy as we sort of go through the product design process. We want to make sure that user empathy is at the center of that process, and to be able to achieve that, we went and asked customers, hey, how do you deploy your policies today? Right, and it was fascinating, listening to some of the stories. They said, "Hey, I typically forward an email that says you got to do this to my security team. My security team then goes ahead and files a ticket, and then somebody picks up that ticket, works on trying to create a regular expression that matches exactly against what we're seeing, test it out, deploy it, and that whole cycle, just takes forever. In a very well-oiled machine, a security team that's functioning at peak efficiency, that's about a week or 10 days. And in most of the situations that we talked to, the security organization was not a well-oiled machine because they were fighting fires across the board, and it was really, really hard for them to manage all of these finer details. And so we sat back and we said, how could we make this easier? How could we make this easy for organizations to deploy a policy? And we came up with this mechanism where we said, hey, listen, we don't want users to sort of learn new workflows. We're going to let them do exactly what they were doing. Let them go ahead, forward an email, and we use our natural language understanding engine to parse that email, understand the context, and automatically look for keywords, look for semantic representations of what that email is talking about. Look at all of in addition to looking at the content of the context, we also look at that metadata because we believe that's important. But then once we understand that, we create and craft a policy and we put it up on the screen saying, hey, would you like to turn this policy on? We want to make it really simple for an admin to be able to say, okay, that policy looks right. I'm just going to hit a thumbs up to turn that policy on, or a thumbs down to turn the policy off. And we make it incredibly easy to click on that policy or edit a couple of fields if you wanted to tweak it, because most of us, as like to tweak things and adjust things. So we give that capability as well. But we wanted to reduce the amount of effort that goes into crafting these policies, and that's really one of our key goals as part of our Armorblox platform.
DJ, what's the most common use case for preventing something bad from happening? Is it intellectual property theft? Is it phishing? Is it what's the most common use case?
No, I mean that's great. So we're focused on, when we started out, we said, hey, let's look at stopping BECs, business email compromise, because that was really one of those inflection points in sort of going after this problem. It was a conversation with one of Hillary Clinton's campaign managers, Ravi Mook, and we're talking about how the email security was fundamentally broken, and digging into the some of the situations that happened before, we understood that a lot of the types of attacks that are showing up right now are largely socially engineered, right? And to be able to protect people from socially engineered attacks, we needed to understand and reason about that textual data. That's really what got us excited about this mission, and that's and here we are. And as we went to customers sort of saw a lot more applications and use cases. They definitely appreciated our efforts to stop BEC, but they said, hey, wait a minute, I really can see this use case of DLP, and to your point about intellectual theft, it's like being able to recognize core IP of my organization being shared to other vendors. Can you please help detect that? Or, can you please help do e-discovery, which was the an additional use case that came up when we went to customers where they were going through a lawsuit and we had to pull out emails from archives to be able to understand the context of communications that could be provided to the general counsel in the case of a lawsuit. So the use cases largely that we're focusing on at this point are email, trying to make sure that we understand email communications, stopping BECs, focusing on data loss prevention by understanding what's inside of emails or documents or any form of communications, textual communications that's happening inside of the enterprises. And then finally, going into other aspects of being able to recognize content and helping, building remediation workflows around that.
And DJ, I would say probably one of the greatest advantages is, in this sense, you're not just looking at what comes from the outside or what's communicating with the internet. This also works for office communications as well, which is sometimes a limitation in some of these defensive technologies to messaging.
No, absolutely true. In fact, there's one of the customers that we're working with right now. They had this use case where they were actively engaged with multiple vendors that they were talking to, and they have non-disclosure agreements with some of these vendors, and these vendors compete. In the open market, they compete with each other, but a lot of times bigger vendors have to work across the board with them, and so they have these very specific requirements that information not be shared with the other party, and this is entirely internal. And turns out one of the emails leaked out to the party, and it caused a lot of conflict among all of these folks. And that's one of the use cases that we are solving today for one of these big Fortune 100 companies. We are actually creating that sort of wall by looking at the content and the context, because it's incredibly hard to write a regular expression or detect patterns across all of these intellectual properties.
And this works beyond just email communication as well, correct?
That is correct. We started out with emails, but we've already expanded to documents. Today, we analyze documents both in your archive, in your OneDrive, in your Google Drive, depending on which stack you pick. And we're focused on expanding the integrations. We already have Box, Dropbox, and Atlassian, all of these on a roadmap as we continue integrating down into the top SaaS stack that you're using inside of the enterprise.
My prediction is that that's going to be a lot more popular, because if you think of it from an attacker's perspective, email security, we've put a lot of effort into email security, right? And we've trained a lot of our users to spot the things in email security. So it becomes somewhat difficult to spoof someone's identity in email because of all of the, MX technologies that exist in mail exchangers today. And because we've trained our users, hey, if you get an email, like just go look at the address. And, like my brother-in-law just told me about an email he got, and he's like, yeah, it seemed kind of weird, but it could be plausible. But when I looked at the email address, it was clearly someone that I didn't recognize and not from the organization. But when we look at things like Slack or Facebook Messenger or any of these other messaging technologies, some of them are pretty easy to spoof your identity, right? Barring any vulnerabilities that could let me even more easily spoof an identity, like OAuth, for example.
That's right. You're spot on. I think that's a very keen observation. I think the way we sort of approach this problem is by looking at writing styles. The study of writing styles is called stylometry, and stylometry allows you to understand how somebody signs off. Like, for instance, if you're signing off your emails with good night or good luck, or you have a specific style of communication when you're in Slack. We're looking at constantly all of those features to recognize, is there any significant change in your writing style when you're communicating? This really helps when you're thinking about account takeovers, right? If there's an ATO that happens and somebody's writing to you from one of their accounts, you could sense that, hey, this person's writing style is fundamentally different. In fact, I know we're using similar techniques that Google's using to automatically complete emails. If you've recently used Gmail, all you got to do is to keep hitting tabs, and then it composes the entire email for you. We're using similar techniques to be able to understand and look in your archives and see, how does Paul write an email, or how does Paul communicate on Slack, and leverage those techniques to be able to say, okay, here's stylometric profile, behavioral profile for the way Paul writes. Now with that in mind, I just wanted to add one more thing about email attacks, though. Most recently, even there was an email that went into went from pretending to be Sequoia Capital reaching out, but that replaced the I believe the Q with a G that sounded like Sequoia Capital, and this is out in the news. So LPs that didn't know better, when they saw the email, it's really hard. When you're looking at something on a mobile phone, you can't quite tell the difference. When it comes to displaying spoofs. And a lot of times people are sending emails from their personal Gmail accounts. They're communicating from something at gmail.com. And it gets really hard because you don't know if that's their personal Gmail account. And people start responding, asking questions. Even if we train them, even if we get them to a point where their senses go off, the spidey senses go off, they respond back and they say, hey, are you sure you are who you are? That information is enough for them to give them recon capabilities, right? In the kill chain, they already made progress at that point because they're now looking at your signatures. How do you sign off? What are the images that you use? So when you play that, they leverage send an email to executive assistant pretending to be you, with that signature, with that response. And so we're seeing a lot of it, still in emails, because unfortunately the world is still run by emails. It's the second largest peer-to-peer protocol right after DNS. But you're right, the world is evolving. We're going to see a lot more very interesting things on Slack and documents and a whole lot of other types of communications that happen inside of the organization.
Mm.
Now, this technique, I think, applies beyond kind of the initial use cases, right? I mean, as we think about the evolution of where technology is going and the trends, we talk a lot about aspects of what becomes the new perimeter, right? We as humans, our communication, and also what we're accessing, the applications, right? And so as we think about this new world we're moving to, where the user, the application, and even the transmission of data, I assume the ability to understand context and content around all those different aspects are something that natural language understanding could eventually apply into as well.
No, absolutely. It's actually pretty much into, our goal as we continue to understand, how enterprises communicate and how they sort of, store data and share data inside the organizations. Our goal is to be able to build on top of that. We're starting with textual data because that's sort of where we see that the biggest pain point. But our goal is to be able to expand beyond that. As we continue moving forward, we would sort of start consuming newer feeds of information, right? We're going to start consuming pretty much, any type of data that's going in and out, any type of, voice, data that's being shared, and leverage that to do the transcoding and then convert it into textual information that we could then analyze. And then if we were to see videos, we would probably use, change our, the way we're doing our deep learning to sort of move into sort of CNNs using convolutional neural networks to understand images as well. And say, hey, here's what, this is a blueprint that, off the, of something that you're working on that you are sharing with somebody else. Or this is confidential information, or even using OCRs. And a lot of times people take pictures of documents and share them as a photograph so that, it doesn't flag using regular expressions. So being able to do all of that stuff is definitely something that we will do. We leverage a natural language understanding platform and the context platform to be able to understand, hey, here's the context of this information being shared. And, and so that we don't flag. And one of the big themes of this is to not flag or send out alerts when it's not important. So if you're sharing a picture of, of a dog, or you're sharing a picture of, of a party that, a bunch of folks taking a selfie and you're sharing that across, that is not core intellectual property. Being able to recognize that and saying, hey, I'm not going to send an alert for that. Whereas I'm going to send an alert if you're sharing, confidential content. Now that's really, trying to improve that workflow is one of our key goals.
Does this capability become more as an underlying component of security of the future? I mean, like I said, we've heard a lot about machine learning, artificial intelligence, but we've seen very few systems that leverage it. Is NLU a base component? Are there other things in artificial intelligence that will give us additional capabilities to solve bigger and harder problems?
No, I mean, I think that's that's a fantastic question. We definitely see NLU sort of being applied across the stack. If you think about the way we sort of think about signals in here at Armorblox is that anytime there's been a new signal, there has been a category creating company that has come along and then solved that problem. If you think about the lower layers of the stack, it was really it started out with operating system and file system and memory, right? And the new signal was basically, looking at files, inodes, and looking at memory signals and whatnot. And then you had all of the EDR companies like Tanium, Carbon Black. And then on top of that, you really had, you had the network layer where the new signal was really the packets and the protocols, with HTTP, with UDP, each one of these protocols allowed you to sort of look at things differently. And you had companies like Palo Alto Networks coming in and saying, hey, look at the application identification and solving a very, very pressing problem there, building that category. And if you go all the way back, up, there's virtualization was the brand new signal on top. And then on top of it was really the applications that are using in the cloud. And so you have the CASB category. We believe we're solving a brand new sort of, a new problem. We're bringing a brand new signal called the natural language understanding on the top. And we're we're focused on understanding the human layer. Now, and if you think about it, across all of these layers at the bottom, while they're important, from a defense in depth perspective, they really are truly reflecting how human beings are communicating on the top. And so, so we sort of see this as working across the board, across every single signal that you are leveraging, and we sort of see ourselves growing and enabling all of these solutions, supercharging the security investments that CISOs are making, across the stack.
Got it. Yeah, it's always interesting to watch how these new techniques and are going to play out, and how they help us solve some of these problems in a better, unique way that we've traditionally never had access to, because we traditionally came from a very signature based world. This is a whole new level of capabilities that we've never really had at our fingertips, which could really change the way we protect and secure not only people but data and other aspects of the stack. Paul, do you have any more questions for DJ?
I do not.
All right, DJ, thank you for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Well, thank you so much, Matt. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, Paul.
You're welcome. Thank you, DJ.
If anyone wants to learn more about Armorblox next week at RSA Conference, please visit armorblox.com/RSA-event to register for their party. We'll take a quick break and then welcome Bruce Sussman for interview number 2.